Hey guys, it's Brandon Farr, and welcome to another episode of the Restoring Eden podcast. Today, you're going to hear from a guest named Mandy Reed. She's the founder of an organization called Dear Dinah. You're going to get to hear all about how her organization started, some of the challenges they have, and what it looks like to do anti-human trafficking work, not only in Dayton, Ohio, but in the United States. And you're also going to hear about this vision that Mandy had that actually is coming to fruition, and it's so awesome. Enjoy the conversation. I also just wanted to say we did have some technical difficulties while taping this. This is the first part of the conversation. It's about an hour long, and then we're going to have a part 2 that will come out soon. So yeah, see you soon. Hey Mandy, how's it going?
Great. How are you?
I am good. So I wanted to tell the people that are listening how this happened. My organization, my wife, and our partners were out in Dayton, Ohio, and we actually had just bought a property, and we were looking at the property, and we noticed about 2 blocks down from our property was an organization called Dream Center. They're based all over the United States, and we were like, wow, let's go talk to them, and we met Wes and his wife Kaylee. Kaylee, right? Kaylee?
Yes. Yep.
Yes, Kaylee McDonald, and they were awesome. They came to our little the little event we had where we got to talk about what our plans, our dreams are for the house, and then they told us about Dear Dinah, and so I looked them up, and I was like, these guys sound amazing. I would love to talk to them. I reached out to Mandy, and she was gracious enough to come on and talk to us and tell us her story. So yeah, Mandy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little about who
Sure.
you are and what you do?
Yeah, and just so you know, when I got your email and I looked you up, I, lit I literally was sitting there in tears reading about what
Wow.
you guys are doing. So it's very mutual, the just impact. So
Yeah.
I'm honored to be here. And yeah, I would love to tell you about Dear Dinah. It's kind of been a whirlwind, to be completely honest with you. So sitting and having this conversation is such a joy to my heart because when I talk about Dear Dinah, it is literally story after story about God's faithfulness
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
watching him heal and restore so many lives in our
Yeah.
city. So I'll kind of, I guess, start from the beginning. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please do.
So in 2020, when COVID shut down everything,
Mhm.
I started noticing on social media these missing kiddos popping up. I don't know if you noticed it, but it was never really on my radar. But I felt like I just kept seeing these missing children posters. And
Wow.
that kind of led me down this rabbit hole of, okay, we know the pandemic is awful. We know that it's, greater than we can even imagine, but there's something else going on here.
Yeah.
And I actually have a dear friend. Her name is Ashley Chapman. I tell everybody to Google her because she's phenomenal, but she fights human trafficking on a global scale. And I have been blessed to call her friend and
Wow.
know a little bit about what she does. But I'll be honest, in 2020, I probably knew just as much about human trafficking as kind of the everyday person who doesn't know that much about human trafficking, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I kind of reached out to her and she directed me towards this training that she had just released on human trafficking. And basically her response was there may be something linked there, but regardless, you need to understand that there is something going on in the darkness. So here's this training, why don't you do it? So I sat down one Saturday and I did this training on human trafficking. And I will tell you, and it sounds somewhat dramatic, but it truly is the same. I sat down one way and I got up from that training a changed person.
Wow.
It,
Yeah.
it really just radically shifted my life. And I think it was because my eyes were open, my heart was broken, and I was in a place in my life where I don't think you're ever ready to fully see that kind of evil. But
Yeah.
I was at a place, and I think the Lord knew this, where I was ready to engage in it and act. And so when I saw what I saw and learned what I learned, and my heart broke, it turned into just prayer after prayer of, Lord, what do I do?
Yeah.
I can't. I would actually cry myself to sleep at night too because I actually have domestic violence in my own past,
Mm,
and I've survived. And going to bed safe and sound is a blessing, and I know that because I've lived in a time when I didn't know. And
right.
so, but then to have this, the realities of human trafficking now on the surface, and I'm going to bed safe and sound, but I'm realizing there are so many souls that are being sold all night long. And of course, during
Yeah.
the day too, but it would hit me at night. I would just cry myself to sleep, and I would turn those cries into prayers of, again, just Lord, show me what to do with this. And so, God is so gracious, to meet us in those moments. And
Yeah.
he had me start by looking into our city to see, okay, what is and isn't being done to fight against human trafficking. Like, first of all, if this is real, that means it must be here, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Which, yes, of course it
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
so then, okay, what is being done? What isn't being done? Is there something missing here? And if there is something missing, then Lord, is it me who you're calling to step into that? And if it
Yeah.
is me, then okay, let's do this.
Hey, can I ask you what you were doing before? Like, what was Mandy doing, like, before this? Like, what was your career? What was your profession?
Yeah, so I was a professional stay-at-home mother.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
So I will say, I mean, my husband
Most
and I,
important
so
job in the world, by the way.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yeah,
My
yeah.
husband and I have been married for just over 10 years. We have two little boys. And so, actually, a few months prior to this happening in 2020, we had just moved back from Tennessee, where we moved in 2018 to do foster care.
Wow.
So, we had been in Tennessee. We had a sibling group of five. We had seven kiddos all together. Our lens was really foster care.
Yeah,
And then the children that we had in our home actually ended up being adopted. And so we really felt like that season had ended, that the Lord clearly called us to Tennessee for this specific group of kids. And
right.
so when we moved back to Ohio, which is where we are now, there was a short period of, okay, what's next? We needed time to kind of breathe and
Yeah,
recoup after that. But it was definitely, I grew up in a missionary family. My dad's a missionary still to this day. He's in his mid 70s, and my mom is in ministry, and so having a mindset of this life is not my own,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's a purpose for being here, and so what does
yeah,
that look like? And that
yeah,
changes sometimes, right?
for sure. Yeah,
But it was clear on that day that my purpose was shifting. I'm mom.
yeah, yeah.
But now I'm turning into also, in addition to that, being an abolitionist and fighting against
So
human
good.
trafficking.
Yes, love it.
Wild. Wild.
Yes, it's so good. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So so I would say, those prayers and the gap and the missing link in our city, I was able to see was this relational piece. And
Yeah,
and we can talk about this, as we go on in our conversation, but it was looking a survivor, a victim in the eyes and saying, the only reason why I'm here with you right now is because I have an honor to do life with you.
yeah,
And
that's good.
there's no strings attached to this.
Yeah,
This is just, you're a soul, I'm a soul, and man, it's an honor to be able to celebrate your victories and be a part of your hurts and walk with you through whatever this is going to look like, right?
right,
Like there's no agenda here. There's no there's nothing like that, especially and men are of course and boys are trafficked, but we work primarily with women. So I'm going to say women, understanding it's not just women, but
right.
for these women that we get to love on and support, they, if they survive trafficking, they're part of a 1% group
Yeah,
because it's a 1 percentile survival rate of human trafficking. So to be able to be honored and be a part of their life, we recognize they have been through a life that was robbed from them, where they had no control, no say over anything at all. Everything that they did or were allowed to do was a result of giving or doing something for someone, which
Right.
is why it's even more important that we say, no, we are just here to be able to love you and walk with you and support you.
Yeah, one of the things that you had said earlier, which I'm kind of curious about, because from my experience now, as far even with even though we have an organization, we support human trafficking organizations. One of the organizations we support is in Thailand, so we've had a lot of experience with what trafficking looks like in Thailand.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they try to make clear, I think people have this notion about trafficking. They see like the movie Taken, and they think that that's what all of trafficking is all about, right? Someone gets kidnapped, and then, and for sure that stuff happens. I'm not saying that, but uh, and but like my experience in Thailand or overseas has been
Mhm.
it's usually like an issue of just whether like some like scarcity, like I have no other choice. They feel like they have no other choice,
Mm.
or maybe family, the family says, "Hey, we need to make money. We need you to go
Yeah.
do this," kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
What is your experience like in the United States, specifically in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? I mean, again, do you have a lot of like the kidnap stories where like someone gets kidnapped and they get taken to a different country or whatnot, and then they're just locked into this, like they're chained in a room or whatever, or is there more to it?
Yeah, there's absolutely more to it. And I think you are right when you said it does happen.
Right.
But what is more common is that the victim actually knows the trafficker before the trafficking even begins, before the exploitation begins. This is a process where there's a grooming process. So, I think most people are somewhat familiar when you say grooming, what that means.
Right.
But
Yeah.
traffickers, they prey on vulnerabilities and they're looking for vulnerabilities around them that they can exploit. And the way that they go about that is through a relational building trust, building a bond, meeting needs of their victims, and then they begin to isolate them and the exploitation can follow thereafter. So it's very, very rarely a kidnapping situation or,
Right.
a stranger just kind of taking someone and then they're selling them.
Right.
There's almost always that piece of pursuit, which can make it incredibly difficult then to
Right.
leave because there is this trauma bond, if you're familiar with
Yes.
the phrase, that has formed over time.
Right.
So, and in our country too, you mentioned the family dynamic. So familial trafficking is fairly common. Actually, in our city it is very common,
Yeah.
for family members to sell family members. Oftentimes, and Dayton, we have a huge opioid problem. And so in
Mhm.
our city, oftentimes you'll find a parent selling a child for drugs. It's a
Yeah.
commodity. And
Yeah.
sadly, I mean, the average age of a trafficking victim right now is 12 years old, unless it's familial. And if it's familial, it drops all the way down to 5. And that's in
Yeah.
our country.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard to hear.
It is hard, and it's hard
Yeah.
too to understand that it's intentional, right? Like these traffickers are actively looking for
Yes.
victims and they're preying on vulnerabilities and also innocent lives, especially when you talk about children because they are where the children are, which mainly is online.
Yeah.
So they're on video games or on social media. And because the tactic they use is relational, oftentimes people will miss it because they'll see people in relationships with someone or a child talking to a friend online, and they completely miss that this is actually someone grooming them for exploitation. They're just going about it to where you would never notice it at the
Yeah.
beginning of it because they're presenting themselves as this trustworthy, great person.
Yeah. 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 So see, there is a lot more to than just
Yeah,
kidnapping, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's um, yeah. Um, Take me back to where you were talking about. Um, I want to hear the moment that you realize, like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm gonna do. One of my
Mhm.
favorite story, like when I hear people's stories, especially success stories, is I love to hear the moment where people, um, like let's say like someone's pursuit is to be a millionaire, whatever, right?
Mm.
And so the moment they make their first $1 million, it's like, what was that moment for you? Whether it was actually starting the organization, because I know how hard it is to get the organization started,
Yeah.
or maybe it was, I don't know, maybe it was your helping your first victim who was getting them out of trafficking,
Mm.
or whatever. What was the big moment for you?
Oh goodness. There have been so many big moments. So if I look back, the first one would be truly when Dear Dinah became Dear Dinah, which was a very quiet and still moment because it was literally me sitting on my couch reading about Dinah in the
Yeah.
Bible, and I'm reading her story, which basically starts about this girl who's 12, 13 years old, average age of a trafficking victim. And the
Right.
story talks about how she is looking for women to build relationships with in the next town. She goes out to these women, and on her way is when she's seen by this man who takes her, violates her, and humiliates her.
Yeah.
And I was reading her story, and my heart absolutely broke because for the first time, I was connecting her with a trafficking victim
Yeah.
who, at that point, it was early on, I had never even known if I met a victim of human trafficking. And
Right.
so, one of my prayers to the Lord was, what do you even say to someone who's been trafficked? Like, what? I don't
Right.
even know what you would say, you know?
Right.
And so I'm reading this story, and suddenly she kind of becomes this image of these girls I've been praying for. And
Yeah.
while I was reading her story, the Lord began whispering, Dear Dinah. And I was hearing, Dear Dinah, Dear Dinah. And I
Mm.
looked it up after I read her story, and Dear means cherished and loved, and Dinah means vindicated. And
Wow.
so that became the message, right?
Yeah.
That's what you
Yeah.
would say to
Okay. Yes.
somebody.
Yes.
First of all,
So
like,
good.
you are
Yeah.
cherished, you're loved, you feel guilty, but you've been found innocent.
Yeah.
That's number one. And then the Lord laid out this ministry. And I mean, like, unfolded it. I could see the space. I could see walking with these girls and in this no strings attached relationship, And it's funny, my husband got home from work, which people who know me know that is very common for me to be like, I had a vision and this is it, and this is what we're going to do, and it's going to look like this. And it's kind of like, keep up. So that's exactly what happened. He got home from work, and I was like, we're going to start a nonprofit. And it's called Dear Dinah, and it's about this, and it's going to do this, and this is the mission, and this is the vision. And anyhow, and it wasn't me. It was, it was already there, just it
Yeah.
hadn't been revealed yet. And
Yeah.
suddenly it's revealed, and I was honored to be able to pick it up and move with it. So that was the first thing. Second thing is, early on in the ministry, it really looked like me reaching out to a lot of local organizations, nonprofits, trying to basically say, how can I help? How can I support? How can I pray? And then I got a phone call one day, and it was a woman in Michigan who had gotten my information. She had picked up a girl who was literally in the snowstorm in Michigan, bare feet, who was
Wow.
on the run from her trafficker. And
Wow.
this woman called me and said, I have no idea what to do. And it was such a shift because it went from I'm calling, and reaching out to suddenly I'm getting a phone call of someone saying, can you help me? I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And that was the first girl that the Lord allowed me to step into her world. I drove up to Michigan and actually picked her up and took her to a safe house, and she went into recovery from there. And we were together for about 7 hours that day, as she is just, I mean, spilling all of this horrific, trauma that she's experienced. And I'm sitting there in the driver's seat thinking, what did I do to deserve the honor of being the person that this girl,
Wow.
feels safe enough, first of all, and trust to share this with, and to get to watch something miraculous unfold in her life, which is what happened. And it felt like such an honor and such a treasure to be able to know her. And and to know, goodness sakes, like you have no idea you were born with a purpose and a plan over your life,
Yeah.
and I cannot
Yeah.
wait to see you when you realize that.
Yeah.
You know?
So good. That's so
And
good.
and it was, I mean, it truly shifted and changed everything. And every time the phone rings, it's hard not to think about her. And it's hard, there, every single one of them, that's a soul on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's powerful stuff. What is it that Dear Dinah is doing now?
Oh my goodness. It's kind of
One of
crazy
many things.
land. It's crazy
Yeah.
land right now. I will say on the day to day, really what it looks like. We have a safe space at the Dayton Dream Center you had mentioned. And
Yes.
so this is really kind of our place where victims and survivors can come and they can be safe, they can breathe, they can drink coffee, they can paint their nails, they can, just hang out with other women and find community. So we always, during the week, we always have that space available. Every week on Thursdays, we have teams that go out and they do street outreach. So we know where these girls are being trafficked, a lot of the areas where they're being trafficked, or areas where we know they're vulnerable to being trafficked. So,
Can I ask you something real quick on
yeah,
that? What does that
yeah,
look like? What is uh, I have an idea, but I would imagine our audience would be curious. What does
yeah.
street witnessing look like? Some of the, is it safe? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. So we usually have three or four to a team that will go out. We have a man who drives the vehicle, and then usually two or three women who will go. So we go to specific areas, like I said, where we know there's trafficking taking place, or we know there are women there who are vulnerable to being preyed on and be trafficked. Whether they're homeless, whether we know there's drugs in the areas, whatever that looks like. So we take purses and we fill them with different care items, resources, handwritten letters, and or food. We'll take food a lot of times too. If it's cold, we take blankets, and we will go up to them and just say, "Hey, can we give you, we have some purses. Would you like one of those? We would love to know you. We'd love to pray for you." And it's really, again, it's all about relational. So
Yeah.
our team is really intentional to go back to the places they've gone to prior weeks. So we may go to a new place, but we are almost always checking back with the women we've met, just so that
Awesome.
they know, like, we actually do want to know you. This is
Yeah.
not just a handout, a one time, okay, we feel great. We just did. No, this is we know that you're here and we want to be with you. And
Yeah.
so it's just the constant going back, building relationships, seeing if they need anything from week to week. I remember you had mentioned before that, this was going on. How are you doing with that? Do you need anything? So it's building the trust, building the relationship.
Yeah.
So that's really important because they don't always know where we are. They don't always know how to find us. And so going to them is really important for us to be able to make sure that they understand that they don't have to do this alone. So
Yeah. I had a similar experience when I was in Thailand. So they do the same kind of thing. They go out
yeah.
to now Thailand. I don't know if have you been to Thailand? Have you?
No.
Okay. So there's like it's everywhere. It's basically like a huge well, it's Pattaya, Thailand. This area, I don't want to say all of Thailand, but this area Pattaya is like the biggest sex trafficking area in the world. It's like a huge red light district area. It's like the red light district in Amsterdam times 100. So
Mm,
um uh and so it's just bars and brothels everywhere. And what the team at Sheer Love does is they go out, the women will go out and they'll same thing. They pass out condoms, they pass out like care items. But their whole thing is building relationships.
yeah.
Now, uh, unbeknownst to me, uh, the men don't go because it just doesn't. It's not a good look. We don't go do that. We go to
Yeah.
the men bars. So because there is a lot of boys and young men that are trafficked out there as well, and so um, and I had no idea that we were doing this. And I was like, okay, well, we're doing this. And it was such a powerful thing because it was the person that we went to talk to, the person that was taking us had already kind of built a relationship with this young man. And it's amazing to see like the trust that grows from a person, because I would imagine that these people are like, it's hard for them to trust anybody, I would
Yeah.
imagine, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it was like, even though in the beginning, I remember having this moment where, uh, the way that it works is we go to these brothels and we sit and we don't buy drinks, but we buy them drinks. So that's how you pay for their time, basically.
Sure.
And so
Yeah.
we sit and then we talk to them, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're trying to sell themselves. So they're flirtatious. They're all sorts of things. And this is another man, and I'm
Sure.
not used to this context, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so I remember there was a moment where it was like I was very uncomfortable, and the guy looked across at me, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And it was like at that moment I felt like God was like, "Just love him for who he is." And at that moment it was just like, "Okay, I'm done. I don't care about anything else. I'm just here for you." Like, and
Yes.
like what you said, like I love how you said, like, I have the honor to sit here and talk to you
Yeah.
and get to know you, and it is such a powerful thing. So, yeah, I love the fact that you guys are. I was curious because I was curious what that looked like in the United States, like
Yeah.
what that looks like. What does street witnessing look for in those
Yeah.
for that kind of thing in the United States? But it sounds a lot like the same.
Yeah. It's interesting, and of course it's going to look different, but a soul is a soul.
Amen. Yeah,
And every soul has the same deeply rooted desire and need to receive love and to give love.
yeah, for sure.
And so I think anytime you're willing to step towards, especially a soul that's been broken, and to
Yes.
have that proximity,
Yeah.
that is the greatest expression of love. That's what Jesus did, right? When he
Yeah.
came to the world, it was the
Yes.
proximity. It was them drawing
Yes.
near to you that
Yes.
can break down so many barriers just by stepping in.
Yeah, we all yearn to be known, right? And to be loved,
Yeah.
and to love, right?
Yeah.
Fully
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
shamelessly, and, naked and unafraid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like, here I am, and take me who for and that's from my experience what God does, what Jesus does.
Yeah.
And you being that for those women is such a powerful, powerful, powerful thing.
It's amazing. So yeah, we do the street outreach, which is I really think like the lifeline of Dear Dinah is going out. But
Yeah.
we also I work really closely with the Human Trafficking Task Force,
Okay.
so which is a whole other ball game. They're the ones like doing the messy behind the scenes stuff, That wasn't something I anticipated when the Lord called me into doing into this space was being involved with the task force. But I will tell you, I mean, I absolutely love being in those crisis moments,
Yeah.
where I've been a part of their undercover stings that they've done, where they're bringing in girls, I mean, literally in handcuffs, and I get to sit with them and wipe their tears in the snot, as
Right.
they're just realizing like, hold up, something wild just happened in my life. They go into a hotel thinking that they are about to sell themselves to someone, and
Right.
it's someone undercover, which your first thought is like, this is the worst thing ever, and it kind of
Right.
is.
Yeah.
But then this beautiful shift happens where you're brought into this room and you realize we're actually here because we care so much about you. We want to show you you don't have to go back to where you just came from.
That's so good. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so good. And so being a part of those moments, and the moment where it's that whole I'm sure you've probably heard it, it's so cheesy but I love it, where it talks about like just when the caterpillar thinks it's losing its life it becomes a butterfly. Like, it's so
I love it.
cheesy
No,
but
it's so
it's
good.
so good. Like,
Yeah.
it's so true. Like, it's those moments where you think like, ah, you hit rock bottom. I love being at that rock bottom moment,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
being able to say like this feels like the end, but this could actually be the beginning. And
Yes.
so I'm able to do quite a bit with the task force. They'll bring in girls too, as they're working with victims, they will actually bring them into our space and we'll be able to, again, just love on them. Like, that's really That's the beginning, that's the end. We just love on them. We connect them to resources as they need it. If they need to be taken somewhere safe out of the state, we will get them there.
Yeah,
It's
wow.
just, we just want to be able to come alongside you. So we'll do that also. And then we are now in the very beginning stages of developing a tiny home community for survivors
Yes,
of
yes, I was gonna
trafficking.
get to that, and I
Ah!
love that. We're in that same space as far as real estate and stuff, so and when I heard that, um, I think Kaylee was the one who told me about it, I was like, "I love that. That is so good." So I wanna talk about that
Yeah,
in a
sure.
little bit, but yeah, yeah, so the task force, are they so they're kinda like the guys that are going in, they're doing the sting operations, they're knocking down the doors, they're
Yeah.
kind of like what like, kinda like more of what you see in the movies kinda thing, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah. These are the detectives, Homeland
right,
Security investigators, SWAT. Yeah, these are the guys that are and women who are they're the ones we fight for justice like emotionally and mentally. They're like
right, right.
they're
Yeah,
going after, the traffickers, which is like, yeah, we need both sides of it. So, and we help really build relationships with the girls because in order to prosecute, that's a whole other side that we don't have to get into. But in order to prosecute a trafficker, you need the victims of trafficking to come forward in so many of
right,
these cases and to share. And that's incredibly traumatizing for them to do,
yeah,
and dangerous also. So, we are able to build that support around them and that advocacy for them to be able to, should they go in that direction, make sure that they're not doing that alone and they have
right.
people there with them. So we'll do that also. And then I do a lot of trainings, which is one of my favorite things to do too. If I'm not with a girl in that moment, I want to be talking about this and I want to make
Yeah,
sure like we know what this looks like, what it actually is, how to engage, how to see it, all of those things. So it's a little bit of everything it feels like right now, but
yeah, it sounds like a lot. What is the I'm just curious for, like, I guess this would be like a state thing. What is like in a sting operation, let's say, is there certain protections for the person that's being trafficked? You mean like they get arrested or whatever, they get handcuffed. Are they actually arrested, or do they have certain protections from the state or
yeah, so sometimes they can do it in different ways. I'll say I've seen a couple different ways. Typically they are arrested, but the reason is because number one is for their safety and it's for the ability for that sting operation to continue.
right,
A lot of times if they're not arrested, they will go back and they will tell what's going on and the whole operation is blown. Because the whole purpose is to be able to get these girls safe and to go after the traffickers. If a girl
right,
goes back and tells them, it's all done. So, in the case, this one in particular that I'm thinking of that I was blessed to be a part of, they held the girls overnight. But before they took them in, they basically, like, we were there to say, as soon as you're out, like, please contact us and let
yeah,
us be a part of your life and support you and walk with you. Now, whether or not they do, but the whole point is the intervention moment of
right.
let's step in and show that there's another way out of this.
What is the um like the I guess the amount or the percentage, if you want to say, of people that like that you have, let's say, that you come in contact with, or that you give them an opportunity. What is it, just in your experience? Like,
Mm,
how many of them they receive that help rather than not?
mm. I know it's very low.
Oh, okay,
But again, it's a 1 percentile survival rate for human
right,
trafficking survivors, So
right,
a lot of times what it looks like, and trust me, we have seen girls come out of the life and they stay out of the life, and it's absolutely powerful.
right, for sure,
For the majority, I would say they will come out and then they will go back in. And that's honestly the biggest driving force behind this tiny home community,
Yeah,
which we're
yeah.
not going to
Let's get
talk
into
about
that.
yet, but
No, 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 no. No, let's get
right,
into
we're
it. I
going to
was gonna
wait
say
to talk about that later.
let's.
But
No, we can talk
that
about it
is a
now.
very common thing that happens is they come out and they go back in.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me your vision. Tell me your dream, this vision you have for this you I if I'm not correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys bought the land already, right?
Okay, hang on, because you froze.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. So,
That's okay. What did I say last?
I was just we were just talking about I said let's talk about the properties. Like
Okay,
or the property that you bought because I want to get into. I think this is a perfect time to get into because I love this. I love this idea. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys bought a piece of land, right?
no.
No.
We were
Okay.
we were given a piece of land.
Wow. Even better.
I
Okay.
know. We were given we were given 19 acres.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is awesome. And
Yeah.
tell me your vision and your dream with this land.
So I was seeing girls going back to the life. You
Right.
know, they would come out and they would go into recovery and they would go back to their trafficker, or they would never even make it to recovery. They would go back. And I had to lean into that, and I really spent a while just in prayer and listening to their stories and just watching and observing. And it seemed as if the common sort I'm looking for theme
Yeah.
was if they made it through recovery, once they finished and they were to move on to that next stage, they're alone again. All the relationships that they made during recovery stay in recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one issue. Another one is that during their time in recovery, which is maybe 12 to 18 months, they're learning all of these incredible skills for the first time and they're healing and it's a powerful time. But then when that time comes, now you have to find a place to live, find a job, get safe transportation, have safe relationships, stay out of this environment, stay away from these substances. I mean, the list just adds up of all of the
Right.
things that you're supposed to do and don't. And
Right.
again, all of your support for the most part stays back in recovery. It's terrifying, right? And
Right.
so a lot of times it's like, I'm going back to the only thing I know because I don't know how to do this. So
Right.
this vision, I saw the land. First of all, I saw the land because I've kind of always known that at some point we probably would step into a housing solution.
I
But
love
I
it.
also
Yeah.
I also knew that I didn't want to have it in an area where some of them may have been trafficked
Right.
or the environment was similar to what they were trafficked in. I
Right.
knew I really, really felt strongly about having it on land where they can just be in the beauty of nature and have this atmosphere of change. And so the vision started with the land and then it started with this transition piece. So these would be for women not fresh out of the life, but for women who have come out of the life, gone into recovery, and now it's that step of, okay, I have the tools, I have the skills, but I'm not quite ready to go rogue.
Yeah.
This is an invitation to, man, we see all of the hard work that you have done, and we want to celebrate that with you. And we want to invite you now into this safe, beautiful environment where you can start to put those skills into practice. You have a home that you get to take care of,
Yes.
and you
So
get to
good.
be on the land, and you get to put your hands in earth, and you get to now discover what makes you feel alive, right? Like just because you learn how to do this doesn't necessarily mean that's what you want to do for the rest of your life. Like,
Right.
what do you want to do?
Right.
Understand it and realize your identity, in Jesus and how you've been created, and then have the ability to put things into practice, to um, live independently while again still a part of a safe community. And then one of the biggest pieces of this, because the Lord really laid this out,
Yeah,
was
it's good.
having the body of believers come alongside and be the full supporters and funders. Is funders a word? But
Yeah.
fund and
It
support.
works.
It works.
Yeah.
This project, I don't do any government funding. It's always been just whoever is felt called and led to support us, and that
Yeah.
doesn't change with this project. I don't like having my hands tied. And I've seen over the last 3 years that every single need that has walked through our door, every need could have been met by somebody in the body of Christ. Every single
Yeah.
one. And that's why I want to go to. That's why I
Yeah.
want to
Cool.
connect them to, because
I love
there's a
it.
person on the other side of that.
Yes,
So
that's so good.
so this is not only a tiny home and a place to live and to take care of your own, space, but it's also you're a part of a community. And this community, when you're ready to step into that next phase of your life, this community goes with you.
Yes, that's good. I love it. So what stage are you at with, so you have the home, or I'm sorry, you have the land that somebody gave to you, which is so
Yes.
good. Uh where are you at now?
So that's pretty much where we are.
Okay.
No, we have the land, we have the 19 acres. We have an event on May 3rd where we are inviting the local church. So churches to come to hear about this project. We're going to cast the vision. We're going to share with them what we need, where we're at, and invite them to be a part of it. Now, I will
Yeah.
say I had another vision, so my board kind of freaked out for a minute because I had to tell them I thought I saw something else, guys. But I had a vision of having our first tiny house at the event. So this is in
Wow.
January. And
Yes.
I just felt so strongly that the people who came to this event had to touch and see and experience what it would be like to step inside your home for the first time.
Yeah, so good.
And
Yeah.
so we didn't have the funding or anything. It's $50,000, by the way.
Yeah.
Literally within
$50,000.
for a
I'm sorry,
house,
$50,000 for one house.
for one house.
Yeah. Okay.
So I had this vision. I told the board, and of course, I told it in this like, so we're gonna have this tiny home at the event. Literally within a month, I got a phone call, and it was somebody saying, "We want to fund your first tiny home. We're bringing you a check on Monday."
That's so good. That is
Didn't
awesome.
ask them, didn't, I mean, none of that. It literally was just the Lord providing once again. So we
Yeah.
have our first home. And
So good.
really, where we're at, we need a civil engineer and we really have to kind of map out the land. We'll have to run in utilities. I mean, we're at ground like zero right
0.
now, which is
Yeah.
super exciting.
Yes. Yeah.
Because this is when we get to have those pioneers stepping in with us to say, we
Right.
see the vision. It's one thing when it's established and people see it and they want to come on board. And we
Yeah.
need those people, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But there's a really incredible moment where none of it has been established other than the very like foundation. And when you get to step on that and say, we see the vision and we want to be a
Yeah.
part of the mission, it's like, okay, let's go.
Yeah. That's the funnest, that's it. That's the best
Oh,
part.
yeah.
We had
Because
this.
then you get to look back and say, I remember when it was just
Yes,
grass here.
yes, exactly. And you can see God's faithfulness in all of it.
All of it.
Yeah, it's so good. We had the same kind of experience when we started, we came up with this idea, and we thought that someone's has to, I'm talking about Eden now, but someone has had, I can't speak, has had to have thought about this.
Yeah.
And so, but we kept talking to people, and we didn't even know if we could. We didn't know anything about anything. We were like, can a 501(c)(3), a nonprofit, even buy a property? Can they make money? Like, how does this work? Like, because so uh, we had no idea, and we through God's providence, the whole way, we found somebody to help us start the 501(c)(3). We got all that put together. Now we're like, okay, we need some money because we want to buy a property. Um, we got to get same thing. We got like 30 to 40 people that we knew that we trusted, and we invited them to like a vision casting dinner, and we said, we just want feedback. We're not asking for any money at all. We just want
Yeah.
feedback. And from that little event that we had, we ended up getting like $60,000, like, and
Oh
we weren't
my
even
goodness. That's
and it was just
amazing.
like, oh my gosh, like so and then that's when, like, we're like, now we can start seeing it, this little idea that we started, this little idea and it's growing into something bigger than we could ever imagine. And
Yes.
same thing with this land. I love it. I love that idea. And so your vision for this land is to have these how many houses do you want to fit on this?
So I see maxing out around 15.
Okay.
Could we put more? Yes. Would the Lord maybe want us to put more? Maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
My thing is, I don't want to lose anyone in the shuffle.
yeah. That's
So
good.
I think, starting out, like phase one is 5 houses. So they would be in cul-de-sacs of 5.
Okay.
So phase one is the first cul-de-sac, and then phase two is the second, the third. Now, if we have 15 women living there and we have so much support, we don't know what to do with it, and
Yeah.
people are storming in to help and to be a part of this. Let's bring in more houses. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just want to make sure that we are not losing anyone in the shuffle, and we are so intentional with the souls that are there. So in my mind, I can only imagine like this much, whereas of course the Lord, who knows what he has in store. But so yeah, so starting out I see 5 before we'll actually open the doors and have women come on site. We'll have our tiny homes, a lavender field, a farm, a community home. And then,
Awesome.
of course, the community ready
Right.
and waiting to bring these women in. And then, as the funding and the support grows, then we'll be able to prayerfully look into adding more homes.
That's so good. I love it, and I would love to continue a conversation offline about what maybe how we can come in and support in any way. I mean, obviously, like I said, this is like our thing.
Yeah.
We love real estate, and so when I heard you were doing that, I was like, this is perfect. I love it. Um, I'm curious about. I want to hear some of like what are some of the as a person who is running an organization, what are some of the pitfalls that you run into? Like some of the things that people don't think about? Because what the thing that Eden, what like our big thing is like we're supporting organizations like yours, right? That we want to
Mhm.
support because one of the things that was mind blowing to us was when we went to Thailand. I use this a lot as a reference because that's what we know at this point. We know other
Yeah.
places, but that's how it all started. Um, Diana, who's running the place, she was living in her school, and we were like, "Oh, are you just living here because you want to, or
Mm.
And she said, "No, I just we ran out of funding, so my some
Mm.
of my some of my donors stopped donating, and
Yeah.
so I ran out, so I couldn't afford a place to live anymore." And she lives in Thailand, which is like rent is $50, maybe $100 a month or something, right? It's not
Yeah.
for a apartment. Um, and she as the founder CEO, she doesn't take a salary from the
Mhm.
organization. Now I understand some people, they have different feelings about that, but uh so we just thought, one of the things that happened while I was out there is I realized that my wife and I, because we invest in real estate and we have this residual income, like we could come out here and just do ministry full time, bring our kids out here and we just do this full time and not have to worry about money, right? We
Yeah.
just we have residual income. So this idea came that, oh, what if we could do this for other people?
Mhm.
But um, it started off as that. Like, it was literally starting actually not just other people, but specifically missionaries. Like, we were like,
Mm.
"Oh, 'cause, what if, we can help missionaries because 'cause they're always looking f they're usually self-supported, by donations or whatnot." And so, but it turned into this big thing, and we realized that a lot of organizations like yours, people that have these, like, big visions and they wanna do amazing things, they're a lot of times limited by resources. And it's like, what if we could just change that?
Yeah.
Right? What if we use the same concept? What if we use, and the thing is like, being around the church for a while, I remember it was like the saying was like, if you're called to be a missionary, God will provide. And I 100% agree, 100%. But sometimes people use that as an excuse. I don't know, my experience as like, um, okay, well, if you're not raising enough money, maybe this is not God's
Mm.
like calling in your life. And
Yeah.
so what I say is, okay, well then God created Eden so that we can step in for that, right? And so my question to you, what is like it doesn't necessarily have to be like, because we don't just help in financial, we help in all sorts of ways.
Hmm.
What some of your, like, things that are kind of, I don't wanna say setbacks, but struggles, things
Hmm.
that make it hard for you to move forward, in your organization?
So there are a few things. I would say on a personal level,
Yeah,
my greatest struggle is I am a mom
yeah,
and I homeschool my two little boys.
yeah,
And I am in a space that I can't easily bring them into. And so, it's one thing to be able to volunteer for a ministry that's doing dark work, and it's another thing to be the one running the ministry that does dark work.
right.
And there's a balance. Every single day, I am finding I am balancing being at home, you know, doing school with my boys and just being with my boys and
Yes.
not answering the phone when it rings or not
Yeah,
answering to this text message or seeing the email pop up but not being able to respond to the email. And also, as a founder, executive director, having a public's eye watching when you are and aren't doing things and
yes.
wanting to say, I'm just a mom. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like, I'm doing this because I love it and I feel called to do it, but I'm also mom and wife and and so along with that comes it should never be just me anyways doing all of it. And I am so thankful for the other people who have stepped in and wanting to volunteer and be a part of it. However, to your point, it's a full-time plus,
yes, yes,
and it doesn't have a 9 to 5 time frame on it. It's around the clock. And
yeah.
so I've told people, if I could, I would hire those people, even if that allows me to be able
Excuse me.
to, bless you,
Thank
to
you.
to be able to manage my time better at home. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? A lot of it really does come to finances can help in a lot of ways when it comes to
yeah,
staff.
yeah, yes,
Staffing
for
really
sure.
is the hardest thing, I would say.
Right,
And there are people who I think would be full time plus, but they're not in a position to be able to without that funding.
right,
So it's
right.
kind of like I am so honored to step in and do wear the hats that I'm wearing, but I also recognize like it would be an honor for this person to get to do that too. But they
Yeah,
can't do it without the funding. So
yeah,
at least to
yeah,
that capacity, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
So
I relate to that so much. Not well. My so we both, my wife and I both work full time. We have 3 kids, 2 boys, 1 girl, 8, 6, and 4, and we homeschool them as well. And we run
you
this,
totally
we're
get it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's yeah, and so I completely understand, and it is, this is it. This is like that's why we think this is so important because you guys, you're doing work. Like you are, to me, and this is just my opinion, and I would say the opinion of the other founders. It's crazy to me that somebody wouldn't that has a nonprofit that's running an organization. This organization wouldn't be like running if it wasn't for the person that started it. That they don't they like, if and they may be in a situation where they can pay themselves a salary, but they don't because they feel like whatever the reason is. Like if
Mm,
it's because of resources, then we want to step in for that. But you're like you're doing the work that most people won't do, obviously, because there's
mm,
if that was the case, if everybody was doing this, we wouldn't have as big of a problem with human trafficking, human exploitation as we do now.
yeah.
So I mean, I completely understand, and yeah, it's even for us, like like even just today, my wife and I were having a conversation, like just a little overwhelmed, you know. And so,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
I have about 2 mental breakdowns a month.
yeah,
Like, on a good month, you know?
yeah,
It's a heavy load, you
yes,
know? And but I mean, we're not alone in it.
right,
And I have to constantly remind myself, I am not on an island, you know,
right,
and I have the greatest example and guide to follow through Jesus, but
amen,
it's also a responsibility.
yeah,
I do also carry a responsibility,
yeah,
and I am in a leadership role for
exactly,
volunteers and for every soul that walks through our door. And so I have to take care of myself. I have to manage the ministry well, but also, being mom, being wife, because if I'm not doing that well, I'm not going to do this well. It's just it all plays into the other, and it is all about balance. I wake up at 5:30 in the
mhm,
mornings so that I can have 2 hours of silence. Those will be the only 2 hours that I get, and I spend them with Jesus.
yeah,
And
amen,
and that
amen,
is what I can the rest of the day lean into for the balance and for the sustenance. Um, because sometimes some of those physical needs are not always going to be provided the way that we feel like we need them to be.
yeah, yeah,
Like, oh
yep,
man, this paycheck would be nice,
yes,
but my needs are still being met, and I'm going to trust that,
right,
and also trust
yeah,
that God's going to provide for the ministry too. It's not all
yeah,
dependent on me.
yes, exactly.
Praise the Lord
Yes, yeah.
for everyone's sake.
Yes. That's so good. No, I love that. It's a good word. As we start to kind of wind down this conversation, what is okay? I'm going to ask a couple questions. What is the like if you could have let's say we are in the Garden of Eden, right?
Ah,
And abundance, like right? It's just abundance. Like God has everything you needed, right? We're coming from that kind of space. What would you want to do with this organization? Like, where would you want to see it? Like, what's the biggest dream that you have for it?
hmm. Honestly, it would be open access to the body of believers, just elbows deep, pouring into these women. So the souls being affected by trafficking would be able to come to us, and we would have an endless supply of soldiers ready to love on them and to walk with them and to serve them and connect with them and see them, find true freedom from the bondage they've been carrying. And it just takes people, though. I remember there's a survivor here in the city who, and I don't want to mess up how she said it, but it was so good. She was saying it took nine people to help her leave the life. It wasn't just one person or two, it was these nine different people. And what I picture and see is just the body. It's that Acts church,
Yeah,
everybody coming together and getting rid of what they, selling what they need to sell to be able to give, and just having this beautiful communion together. And that's the thing about Eden. Like, yes, it was an endless supply of just good, sweet,
yes,
things, but it was also this
yeah,
beautiful uninterrupted relationship with the Lord, day by day, walking with him.
yes, yep, yep.
And
Cool of the day.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think that's what I would want to see for this community, is that's what they find when they come here, is this uninterrupted, like, Salah. That's the name of it.
yes.
Salah. It's
Oh,
this
yeah,
pause, it's this breath, it's this, oh my goodness, I can actually experience communion with the Lord and these people, and his goodness here on earth too.
yeah. It's like that Shabbat that they talk about in Hebrew, like the Shabbat, the rest, like the just that, like, being in God's presence, and also being in a community of people that love you and know you, and that you know them and that you love them. That's, yeah, that's it.